The letter was stiff with age, the edges yellowed and brittle, tucked deep in the drawer behind old photographs I never bothered to sort. I pulled it out one late night when insomnia had me restless, mind tangled in regret. The handwriting, my grandma's, still held the softness I remembered, even though time had blurred the ink. "Visit me before I forget who you are," it read. That line struck me in the chest. How many Christmases, birthdays, Sundays had passed since I'd seen her last? How many times had I told myself I'd go soon, yet sat frozen in place? I pressed my trembling fingers to the words as though letting the letter burn its sorrow into me. Behind me, the hallway was silent, my apartment's walls closing in with memory and guilt. I wished I'd opened it sooner. Wished I'd answered her final plea while she could still speak my name. And then the shock, beneath that scribbled farewell lay another message. Not hers. Someone else's. A hidden note, folded tight. "Don't come closing," it said. She begged, but you never answered. Let the ghost rest. My heart pounded. Was that part of Grandma's voice? Or someone else's warning? The ghost of her final cry now lived in my drawer, waiting. I crashed onto my couch, the letter falling onto my lap, papers tumbling like falling truth. I should have opened this years ago. But some ghosts only find you when you're ready, and I realized, had been running from hers. I looked around my dim living room. My phone glowed with unread messages from distant cousins, from siblings I'd grown apart from, all asking, "Are you coming home this year?" The letter felt like a trap and a gift all at once. I whispered, "I'm coming, Grandma," though she wasn't there to hear it. I would come. I would try to set things right. I'm Marisol Harris, 26, and I live now in Birmingham, a long drive from Mobile, from the red clay roads of my childhood, from Grandma's old porch where sunsets painted everything gold. I moved away chasing a job opportunity, chasing a life, but somewhere I traded presents for ambition, and I left pieces of my heart behind. Grandma Agnes had always been a constant. Her house smelled of sweet tea and honeysuckle. In summer she sat on her porch swing wearing pastel dresses she'd sewn herself, humming old hymns. I'd visit her on weekends as a child, dragging my schoolbooks across her tile floors, learning how to cook biscuits, how to share stories, how to be patient. Then life shifted, college, work, relationships. I got busy. My calls to Grandma became monthly, then quarterly, then holiday check-ins. She never complained. She just waited. One year she canceled Christmas dinner. She said she was tired. The next, she skipped my birthday. The next, she didn't answer calls altogether. We all assumed she was just aging. Then her husband, my grandpa, passed. And Grandma changed. She stopped sewing. She stopped singing. She sat in her favorite chair staring out windows, waiting. Family whispered, it's too much for her alone. But I told myself work and distance made it hard to come back. Rationalized the gap. Thought she'd understand. When I found that letter, I realized she'd been screaming for a visit. And I had ignored her. I left Birmingham that morning, heart low, car packed. I drove the highway south, watching palms and marshes blur by. My mind spun. What would I say to her after all these years? Would she recognize me? Would she forgive me for forgetting? I arrived in Mobile just before dusk. The house was the same, white pillars, creeping vines, wind bell at the gate. But it felt empty, fragile. A grandmother's ghost lived there waiting. I unlocked the door with fingers that trembled. Inside, dust motes danced in twilight. The living room was quiet. The smell of honeysuckle was faded. On the mantel, a framed photo of Grandma and Grandpa, smiling, watched me when I entered. My footsteps echoed. I opened drawers, looked for her favorite teacup, her sewing basket. Nothing moved except me. Then I remembered the drawer in her bedside table, the one I'd rifled through at Christmas when I visited last. That's where the letter had come from. I went to her room. The bed was neatly made, untouched. The dresser held trinkets, small jars of buttons, perfume, pictures. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Grandma?" Then, I heard a creak upstairs, barely a floorboard shift, but someone or something moved. My heart juddered. I froze. The house was supposed to be empty. A soft shadow passed at the top of the stairs. I turned. No one there. But the tension hung like spider silk. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step soft, each breath loud in my ears. Halfway up I saw her rocking chair in the corner of the hallway. It hadn't moved. Then the chair creaked forward by itself, a whisper of motion that felt like a ghost sigh. I gasped. The chair shuddered. Then stillness. My phone in my pocket vibrated. A message from my brother, Devin. "You found the letter? Don't go in there alone. I'm on my way." I crushed the phone in my hand, too many years of unspoken things flooding my throat. I didn't know if I wanted help or revenge. But I moved forward, because some silences demand a voice. The screen dimmed, and the house felt heavier than before. Devin's message replayed in my head, "Don't go in there alone." His words itched at the edge of my nerves. But I was alone. And I had already crossed the line. When I reached the top of the stairs, I found a small room I didn't remember. Grandma's sewing den. It used to be bright, full of sunlight and the sound of her gospel records. But now it was cold, the curtains drawn tight, the air stale with time. Her sewing machine sat silent, thread tangled on the needle as if she'd left mid-project and never came back. Beside it sat a small wooden chest. My chest tightened as I knelt beside it, Grandma's keepsake box. She used to guard it like treasure, telling us it held the stories that matter. I hesitated, fingers trembling, then opened it. Inside were layers of folded fabric, old church programs, faded family photos, and at the bottom a sealed envelope marked to Marisol, "When you're ready." My stomach twisted. The handwriting was hers. But the ink, the same faded ink from the first letter I'd found. I tore it open. "Baby girl, if you're reading this, I may already be gone. Don't be angry, life don't wait for our timing. You and your brother, you drifted so far. I tried calling, but your numbers changed, your lives moved on. I wanted to tell you something before it was too late. There's money, Marisol. Not much, but enough to make things right. It's hidden, and only the truth will find it. Ask your brother what he did with the check. And if you hear the rocking chair creak at night, don't be scared. That's just me waiting for peace." I felt my hands go cold. Money? A check? What did she mean? I sat back, the wooden floor creaking beneath me. My mind raced. Grandma had written this knowing I'd one day find it. But what truth was she talking about? Before I could think, a loud bang came from downstairs, the front door slamming open. Marisol. Devin's voice echoed up the stairs. I exhaled, relief and fear tangling together. "Up here." I called. He appeared at the top of the stairs, taller than I remembered, his hair graying at the temples. He looked tired, nervous, and when his eyes landed on the open box in front of me, his whole face drained of color. "You opened it," he whispered. "I did," I said softly. "She left something for me." He stepped closer, swallowing hard. "You shouldn't have come back." "What are you talking about?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes darted toward the letter in my hand. "She wrote that before she got sick," he said finally. "She wasn't thinking straight." "Devin," I said carefully, "what did she mean about the check?" His jaw tightened. "You wouldn't understand." I stood, anger rising through my shock. "She said you had it." "What did you do, Devin?" His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I took care of her," he snapped. "You were gone, remember? You didn't even visit. You think you have the right to come here and dig up ghosts?" The words hit me like a slap. You think I don't feel guilty? I live with it, I shot back. But don't you dare pretend this is about me. What did you do with that check? He turned away, pacing. It wasn't supposed to matter, he muttered. My heart pounded. You stole from her, didn't you? His silence was answer enough. I felt my stomach drop. Grandma's truth wasn't about forgiveness, it was about betrayal. She trusted you, I said quietly. She wrote that letter because she knew. Devin finally looked at me, his eyes wet but hard. You weren't here, he said. You don't know what it was like watching her fade, day after day. The bills piled up. She wanted to leave something behind, and I just borrowed it. I took a step back. Borrowed? She died thinking her savings were gone. His voice broke. She forgave me before she died. But I could see in his trembling hands that wasn't true. I turned toward the chest, digging through it again. Beneath the letters and fabric, I found an old photo, Grandma sitting between us on the porch swing, smiling like she always did. On the back, in faded ink, was written, "Everything comes back home." Something inside me cracked open. Maybe it wasn't about money. Maybe it was about guilt. But when I looked up, Devin was gone. Devin? Silence. Then the sound, the rocking chair creaking again from the hallway. Slow, deliberate. My breath caught. I stepped out of the room. The chair moved once, twice, then stopped. And there, on the seat, was a new envelope. Not yellowed with age, but white. Fresh. My name written in shaky handwriting that wasn't Grandma's. If you really want to know the truth, check the basement. I swallowed hard. The basement. The one place Grandma never let us go as kids. That's where the memories sleep, she used to say, half smiling, half warning. But tonight, it didn't feel like memories were sleeping down there. It felt like something was waiting. I could still hear the house creak softly, like it was listening. Devin was nowhere to be found. My calls went unanswered, his phone buzzed faintly from somewhere upstairs. He'd left it behind. Fine, I whispered to no one. You don't want to talk? I'll find out myself. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and made my way to the basement door. The air changed the moment I touched the knob, heavier, colder, full of static. The stairs groaned under my feet. Dust danced in the light beam as I descended, one step at a time. The smell of damp wood and rust filled my nose. At the bottom, I saw the old washer and dryer, Grandma's canning jars, and a stack of boxes labeled Smaz. Everything looked ordinary, but too neat, too untouched, like it had been staged. Then I saw it, a loose board in the far wall. My heart kicked into my ribs. I crossed the room, crouched, and pulled the board free. Behind it was a small tin box. Inside, wrapped in yellowing newspaper, were 3 items. A photograph of Grandma in her hospital bed, smiling weakly. A folded check made out for $42,000 from the sale of her late husband's land. A handwritten note. Devin took the money. Said it was for me. But I know he'll keep it. Marisol, if you ever find this, make it right. Tell him forgiveness has a price. My breath came shallow and fast. Devin had lied. Not only had he stolen Grandma's last savings, he'd buried the evidence right under her house. I sat back on the cold floor, tears blurring the flashlight's glare. My throat burned. She'd known he'd betray her. She'd even left me the map to uncover it. Make it right, she'd said. I wanted to scream. Not because of the money, but because she'd spent her last months wondering why I never came, why the one person she trusted was the one who took everything from her. I wiped my face and stood. Rage burned where sadness had been. If Grandma's ghost wanted peace, I would give it to her, by making sure her story was told, her betrayal seen, and her son held accountable. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in her old room, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows over the walls. Every sound of the wind, the ticking clock, the soft whisper of the rocking chair down the hall, felt like Grandma urging me forward. The next morning, I called Devin. He didn't answer. So I drove to his house, a small brick place on the edge of town. His truck was in the driveway. He opened the door, eyes bloodshot. "Marisol," he muttered. "You shouldn't be here." "I found it," I said. His face froze. "Found what?" "The check," I said quietly. "The note." "Everything." His eyes darted away. "You don't understand?" "No," I cut him off. "I understand perfectly. You took her money. You lied to her. You let her die thinking she'd lost everything." He stepped closer, his voice cracking. "I was desperate. The business failed, my kids." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't you dare make this about anyone but you." Tears welled in his eyes, but I didn't soften. "You could have asked for help," I said. "She would have given it willingly. But you stole from her." He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I was going to pay it back," he whispered. "She died before you did." That silence, heavy, final, filled the whole room. I turned toward the door, my voice shaking but steady. "She asked me to make it right. So I will." He looked up, panic flashing across his face. "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer. I left him with his guilt and my promise. Back at Grandma's, I sat on her porch, holding that old check in my lap. The sun was setting, turning the sky the color of her favorite peach cobbler. I thought about what she'd said, forgiveness has a price. I couldn't bring her back. But I could make sure her story didn't die in that dusty basement. So I started with her church. I called Pastor Lewis, the same man who'd led her funeral. I told him everything about the letter, the money, Devin. He listened quietly, then said, "Child, you do what you need to. Truth don't stay buried long." That night, I planned my revenge. Not the vengeful kind, but the kind that cleanses. I called the rest of the family. I told them to meet me at Grandma's house that Sunday, said it was about her legacy. When the day came, everyone showed up. Aunts, cousins, even Devin. The tension was thick as syrup. I stood in front of them with Grandma's letters laid out on the kitchen table. "She left something behind," I said. "Not just memories, truth." Then I read the letters aloud. Every word. Every plea for visits, every line of love, every confession about the missing money. By the time I finished, the room was silent except for the sound of my aunt sobbing softly. Devin stood against the wall, pale as paper. "She wanted peace," I said, my voice trembling. "But peace can't come without truth. She deserved better from all of us, especially him." I didn't have to point. Everyone knew. Devin left without a word. And for the first time in years, the house felt warm again, like Grandma's spirit could finally breathe. That night, as the family left, I sat alone on her porch again. The wind chimes tinkled softly. I whispered, "It's done, Grandma. I made it right." And from inside the house, I heard the soft creak of the rocking chair, one last time. For 3 nights after the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like Grandma's ghost pacing through the halls, waiting for me to finish what I'd started. I thought exposing Devin would be enough, that reading her letters would bring closure. But it didn't. Something still felt unfinished. Her words haunted me, "Forgiveness has a price." I began to wonder if that price had been paid, or if Grandma was waiting for me to make him truly understand what he'd done. So, I decided to go further. A week later, I drove down to the courthouse to pull Grandma's records. I wanted to know exactly how Devin had gotten access to her money. The clerk, a polite older man with thick glasses, scrolled through the computer files and frowned. He murmured. According to this, she transferred power of attorney to your brother 6 months before she passed. My stomach dropped. She did what? He turned the screen so I could see. Devon's name was signed beside hers, but her signature looked shaky, uneven, like it had been forged. Can I get a copy of this? I asked. He printed it out, and I stared at the document, my pulse pounding. Grandma would never have done that. Not without telling me. Devon had stolen from her, and to cover it, he'd faked her permission. That night, I sat in her living room with the lights off, the paper in my lap. The air felt electric, charged with something unseen. You knew, didn't you, Grandma? I whispered. You left me the clues. And I swear, the wind chime outside gave a soft ring, even though there was no breeze. The next morning, I made a call to Mrs. Turner, Grandma's best friend and neighbor for 30 years. She was a short, warm woman with silver curls and a sharp memory. Child, she said, when I explained what I'd found, I always suspected something wasn't right. Your grandma used to call me crying some nights, said she felt trapped. Trapped how? I asked. She said Devon kept her mail, her phone. Said she couldn't even drive to church without him hovering. I clenched my jaw. So he isolated her. She told me once, Mrs. Turner said softly, if I go, tell my babies I tried. That was it. The confirmation I needed. I thanked her, then went home and started planning. Revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it comes with truth so sharp it cuts clean through denial. I gathered everything, the forged papers, the letters, the hidden check, even a voicemail Grandma had left on my old phone months before she passed. Her voice trembled through the static. Baby girl, I don't want to be a burden. But I think Devon's doing something with my bank. Don't tell him I said that. It was heartbreaking, but it was proof. Then I made a call to WZAL Radio, the local station that aired community stories. I pitched it as a segment about elder financial abuse, how often it happens within families. I said I had a personal story, one that needed to be told. They agreed to record it for their Sunday show. I didn't name Devon at first. But as the segment went live, I shared every detail, how Grandma's voice had faded, how her savings vanished, how guilt haunted me. I ended it with, and to the person who took her trust, if you're listening, know this, forgiveness isn't free. The story spread fast. Neighbors called. Old family friends reached out. Church members started asking questions. And Devon, he couldn't hide. He called me that night, his voice raw. What did you do? I told the truth, I said simply. You're ruining me, he shouted. No, Devon, I said quietly. You did that yourself. Then I hung up. But that wasn't the end. 2 days later, I returned to Grandma's house to gather the last of her things before selling it. The air inside was cooler than usual, like the temperature dropped just for me. I went upstairs to her room and noticed the rocking chair again, still, silent, facing the window. Only this time, something rested on the seat. A photograph. It was one I'd never seen before, Grandma holding a baby, smiling wide. On the back was written in her careful handwriting, everything you need is in the walls. I frowned, turning it over and over. Then it hit me, the loose board in the basement. There had been more space behind that wall than the small tin box had taken up. I ran downstairs, flashlight in hand, and tore away more boards. Behind them, hidden in a hollow gap, was a small metal safe. Inside, bank statements, receipts, letters, and another checkbook, this one written in my name. She'd left me something after all. Quietly. Without telling anyone. At the bottom was a final note. Marisol, I knew he'd take what wasn't his. So I left what's mine for you. Don't hate him. Let life teach him what guilt won't. Use this to rebuild, to remember who you are. My peace is yours now. Tears filled my eyes. I clutched the letter to my chest. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered. Outside, thunder rumbled softly, but it felt like a blessing, not a warning. By the next week, word had spread. The radio story gained traction. A local journalist picked it up, connecting it to a bigger conversation about elder care and family betrayal. Devon's business, a small construction company, started losing clients. People didn't want to work with someone accused of stealing from his dying mother. Then, karma took its final swing. I got a call from a lawyer. Grandma's bank had been investigating an old fraud report she'd filed months before her death, a claim Devon had closed himself. With the documents I provided, they reopened the case. A month later, Devon was charged with financial misconduct. He called me once more. "You happy now?" he rasped. "No," I said softly. "But Grandma finally can be." He hung up without another word. The night before I left Mobile for good, I returned to Grandma's house one last time. The air was calm, the sky painted pink and gold. I sat on the porch swing with her last letter in my lap. "I did it, Grandma," I said aloud. "You're free." The wind lifted softly, brushing against my cheek, warm, gentle, like a hand I used to know. And then, the faintest sound. The rocking chair upstairs began to move, slow and steady. Not creaking. Not eerie. Peaceful. I smiled through my tears. "Rest now," I whispered. "We're both home." For the first time since she'd passed, the house felt light. The air no longer heavy, no whispers of guilt or sorrow. Just the hum of quiet peace. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The porch light flickered once, glowing gold. Maybe it was the wiring. Or maybe, just maybe, Grandma was saying goodbye. 6 months had passed since that night in Grandma's old house, the night her spirit finally rested, and so did I. I had moved to Birmingham, started fresh. I took the inheritance she'd left, not much, but enough to rebuild. I opened a small thrift and consignment shop called the Second Chance Closet. Every tag carried a note that read, "Dedicated to Lila May, who believed every soul deserves a second chance." It wasn't just a store. It was a story, our story. But even after all that time, there were nights I'd sit by the window, holding one of Grandma's scarves, and remember the sound of her voice humming gospel hymns in the kitchen. The grief never truly left, it just softened. One morning, while sorting through donated clothes, I found something strange, a neatly folded letter with no return address. Inside, a short note. I listened to the radio. "I'm sorry. I know it's too late, but I wanted you to know, I didn't mean for it to go that far. I'm trying to be better. D." It wasn't much. But it was enough. I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already seen it unfold in the quietest ways, through truth, through karma, through the strength I found when I thought I had none left. That night, I recorded a message for my viewers, not as a story, but as a reflection. "Studio microphone, if you've been here since the beginning," I said softly, "thank you for walking through this with me. I know it's been heavy, grief, betrayal, forgiveness, it all sits on the heart like stone. But maybe, just maybe, this story reminds you that justice doesn't always need shouting. Sometimes it's found in peace, in closure, in moving on without bitterness." I paused, letting my voice tremble, not acting, just being real. And if you've ever been hurt by family, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unloved, remember, your worth doesn't depend on who hurt you. You can build something new from the ashes. I did. Grandma Lila May believed in that. Then, gently. Sparkles, if this story touched you like it did me, hit that like button and subscribe. Every story we share here is a piece of healing, a place where pain finds peace. And trust me, we've got more stories like this coming, stories that remind you you're not alone. Sparkles. That video became one of my most watched uploads. Comments flooded in from people sharing their own heartbreaks, lost parents, greedy siblings, love turned to betrayal. But through all of it, one thing echoed again and again. Thank you. I needed this. And maybe that was Grandma's real revenge, not exposing Devon, not proving anything. It was giving me a voice. It was helping others find theirs. Months later, I returned to Mobile one last time, not out of sadness, but to visit her grave. I brought lilies, her favorite. The air was still, the sun warm on my shoulders. I did what you asked, I said softly, kneeling beside the headstone. I made peace. I forgave him. And I built something good. A small breeze brushed through the trees, lifting the edge of my scarf, just like that night in her house. I smiled. Yeah, I whispered. I miss you too. As I turned to leave, I noticed a woman nearby, gray hair, kind eyes. She looked at me, smiled knowingly, and said, "Your grandmother raised a strong one." I froze for a second, heart pounding. You knew her? She just smiled again, touched my arm, and walked away. When I looked back, she was gone. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was something more. Either way, I knew she'd heard me. And that night, when I got home, I lit a candle and whispered, "Good night, Grandma. Thank you for everything." The flame flickered once, then glowed steady. Peace. Finally. Headphone, thanks for listening, family. If this story reminded you of your loved ones, go call them tonight. Go forgive someone. Go visit that person you've been meaning to. Life's too short to let love sit unopened in a drawer. Like, subscribe, and come back next week for another story that hits close to home. Until then, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in second chances.